And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said one to another, let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us. We're still looking at the birth and the very young childhood of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Now, again, Jesus, in his fully empowered form, if we want to call it that, has always existed and will always exist. But in the flesh, there was a certain time that he existed on earth. And there in Luke chapter 2, that passage we just read is talking about the shepherds who were pretty much the first outsiders, other than Mary and Joseph, and I guess farm animals that saw quote unquote baby Jesus. I was looking at some of the nativity scenes, as they call them. You see those go up every year, and you see them so much you kind of pass over them. But this year, I think I paid a little bit more attention to some of them. And one of the things I noticed is in these scenes that are on people's lawns or in front of churches and these things, they always put everything in one scene. Baby Jesus, then they got Mary and Joseph. They've usually got an angel, at least one angel, overlooking the three in this family. They've got the shepherds that we just mentioned there in Luke chapter 2, and they've got the wise men from Matthew chapter 2, all looking at Jesus. And of course, the farm animals, because everybody knows about Jesus being laid in a manger, which is a kind of feeding trough. But in the Bible, Mary and Joseph, Jesus, and the animals were there, and the shepherds, which were told about Jesus, the shepherds came upon them. The shepherds came to this stable that was at the inn where Mary, Joseph, and Jesus could not find a room. And the reason they couldn't find a room, some of the things I'm saying are just basic and people know about them, but we're just trying to paste down the timeline of baby and toddler Jesus Christ. The reason they couldn't find a room at the inn in that area is because everybody had come to Bethlehem to be taxed, or I think what we would call it a census today. I think you can look at Luke chapter 2, verse 1, and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And I think that can be said to be another word for enrolled, taxed or enrolled. Or I think today in the 21st century, we would call that a census. Everybody's being counted in order that the government, tax collectors, can go around and get money from people. Pretty much a wicked thing if you ask pretty much anybody. And that was going on in that day. Government's pretty much picking your pocket. So in Luke chapter 2, verse 1, all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And if you read the New Testament, you'll notice Luke, who is said to be the doctor of the four gospels, he's a doctor, and he's got more history. He lists or talks about things, writes about things that you can line up with real historical people and places than I think the other three do. So continuing, and all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. Verse 4, and Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth. So Galilee is like an area or a district. Nazareth is the city where they lived. Jesus was not born yet at this time. They went down to Bethlehem, which they called the city of David in Judea. But Joseph and Mary being great with child, that is, she's pregnant and about to deliver this baby that was born of a virgin, and they travel down to Bethlehem to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. So she has a baby and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. And we can say that was because everybody was in the area getting taxed or getting counted. If you see a movie or something like that, they're going to add this stuff about an innkeeper being mean to them or something, being mean to the supposed parents of Jesus to make it more dramatic, I guess. But no, I just think there were a lot of people in that area and they didn't have a reservation, you can say. So in the same country, shepherds are abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock at night. And the angel of the Lord came upon them. The glory of the Lord shone round them, and they were sore afraid. The angel said, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy." Everybody kind of knows this passage, talking about Christmas, the birth of Jesus. And most people agree that Jesus was not actually born on December 25th. That date was chosen for, we'll just say, pagan reasons, and they just attached Jesus to it. Some of the things I'm saying right now, there's a lot of depth to it. But again, we're just trying to nail down basic things. We know the basic stories, basic timeline, basic events, but we want to kind of put them in order here. As you know, the Bible does not always tell what happened in a straight line, and you have to know what you're reading. And I believe God does this on purpose, so you have to pay attention to what you're reading. In fact, I'm quite confident of that because a lot of people think they know what this stuff says. They think they know about the Bible, and they don't. They're always talking about the Bible, but they're just ignorant people a lot of times, including people who are real believers or are in churches all their life. They're not really paying attention because they watch the movie or the cartoon, so they don't actually get into the King James Bible and read for themselves. So there's a host of angels around these shepherds in the field at night, bright lights and angels popping up in the middle of the night. And there's no street lights at that time, of course. You're shepherds in the field, and this is going on. I think I would be afraid, or at least in a great amazement. And that's what happened to these shepherds. So they're getting the news about the birth of Jesus. So, verse 16 in Luke chapter 2, they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. So they went around, as you'll say, publishing little Jesus, publishing his birth, not publishing as in a book. That's usually what you think of, or publishing a newspaper or something. That just means you went around and told it to everybody. They run and told that. And all they that heard it wondered at these things, at those things which were told them by these shepherds, by the shepherds. The shepherds returned and glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen as it was told unto them. The shepherds were really the ones who announced the birth of Jesus. Sometimes you hear it, or the wise men announced Jesus, the birth of Jesus. It's not really true. The wise men hadn't gotten there yet. As I said, in the scene, everybody's together, but the wise men did not get there until way later. So let's go back to, I think we just talked about that recently in Matthew chapter 2. So that was Luke chapter 2. The shepherds were told about Jesus in Bethlehem. They were out in the country near Bethlehem, and they went and saw Jesus. So you go back to Matthew chapter 2. At the beginning of that, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? We have seen a star in the east and are come to worship him." So they must have had some kind of status where the king received them. Herod the king knew that they knew something, and he had them brought to him. They were brought to him. I don't know how they got access to the king like that, but somehow they did. God made that possible in some way. So they said unto him, Herod, in Bethlehem of Judea, thus it is written by the prophet that Jesus is born in Bethlehem. Out of thee shall come a governor, capital G, governor, that's Jesus Christ, that shall rule my people Israel. So Herod inquired of them diligently. We're still in Matthew chapter 2. Herod's asking these wise men what time the star appeared. So the star, the star that appeared to these wise men, it seems to have happened at the birth of Jesus, but these wise men were not in Bethlehem. In fact, they were nowhere near this area. in Judea. It just says in verse 1 in chapter 2 of Matthew, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. So they're from, you can say, Asia. And there's no bullet train, no Amtrak, no Greyhound bus or something. They didn't go there in a Ford Explorer to see Jesus. It took them some months probably to travel following this star to find Jesus. This is just me reading the Bible without going to a bunch of other sources. I'm looking at the Bible and depending on the Holy Spirit to tell me these things. So if I'm getting something wrong, feel free to tell me. But this is what I'm getting out of it. So Herod is worried because this child that they're talking about, he knows who it is. And he wants to kill this child. We can cut across the field on this. That he wants to kill this child because he knows this child is going to end up being the ruler of everything. He knows who it is. He sent them to Bethlehem, where they said they have been told, where they said the prophecy was sending them, and said, "Go and search diligently for the young child. And when you have found him, bring me word again, and that I may come and worship him also." So remember right there in verse 4 of chapter 2 in Matthew, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And in verse 7, he inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. So he's kind of doing some mathematics in his head to see when the child was actually born. This is way after Jesus' birth. As I said, it must have been weeks or I believe months. I believe Jesus is a child that is a toddler at this time by the time the wise men get to that area. The reason I think that is verse 9, when the wise men, when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. It never says the star was what took them to Bethlehem, to the manger, or to the place where the taxing or enrollment or census was going on. It just said it led them to where the young child was. Because remember, if we go back to Luke chapter 2 there, after the child is born, the shepherds went and told everybody about this wonderful young child. Right after that, Luke chapter 2, verse 21, the child is circumcised according to the law or the custom at that time. And some elders in the temple, or that is a church at that time, Simeon and Anna, these elders blessed, or you can say dedicated in our language, I guess, young Jesus, baby Jesus. He's still like under 2 weeks old at this time. When they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, in verse 39 of Luke chapter 2, they returned into Galilee, into their own city, Nazareth. That's where they were from. That's where Joseph and Mary were living before Jesus' birth. And when they went to Bethlehem for the government stuff and for the circumcision and for the blessing by these elders, so they went back to Nazareth. That was where they lived. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit. So it kind of jumps time there from 39 to 40. But in between 39 and 40, that's when the wise men show up. And I believe it was in Nazareth. They were in the house, Jesus and Mary and Joseph. They were in their house in Nazareth. And Jesus was probably over a year old at that time. So the wise men brought three gifts. Remember, we were talking about the wise men. Everybody talks about there being three wise men. All the dramas and cartoons say there were three wise men. There may have been three wise men, but I don't believe that there necessarily were three wise men. I think the reason people say there were three wise men is first because it's a nice and round number that everybody likes. Second, it's a kind of secret society number that is used in a lot of sometimes wicked ways. And thirdly, there were three gifts: the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. That's why people like that number three, three wise men. But I don't necessarily think there were three wise men. It's kind of like the apple that we always talk about. You don't know if it was an apple that Adam and Eve ate. I don't think it was an apple because the whole world says it was an apple. That's main reason I don't think it was an apple, because everybody says it was one, if you understand me. And it's the same here. I don't think there were necessarily three wise men because everybody says there were three wise men. So they're probably wrong. That's why I say that. Back to Matthew chapter 2, verse 10, they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy, these wise men, because the star was standing over where a young child was, as I believe, in Nazareth, where Joseph's house was. When they were come into the house, they saw the young child, not a baby in a manger, with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they have opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. So again, we're just trying to nail down the timeline here. The Bible kind of goes back and forth, and you need to pay attention to what it says there. You ought to pay attention to what it says about Jesus. All scripture is profitable. We just like going through these short studies here. This is better than the TV. This is better than what the world is going to say about Jesus, because the world is always going to pervert and twist it up and basically lie. And I like pointing out these lies so we can get to something that's more true. Because you got to remember, the world does hate Jesus because he testifies that its works are evil. The world, that is, the people in the world who reject what Jesus did on the cross. They hate the cross. They hate the idea that they have to be accountable to sin. So I don't really believe a lot of things that they're going to say about Jesus. Everybody's always talking about Jesus. I don't believe a lot of things that they say. I'm just going to go right to this book and let the Holy Spirit point things out to me. And I hope you listening will do the same. But let's finish up here. The wise men were warned of God in a dream, Matthew chapter 2, verse 12. They were warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod. They're not supposed to tell them that they found Jesus. They deported into their own country another way. Let me pause here for this train. So Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth. He's furious. He sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. 2 years old and under. So he was making sure that he was gonna kill this baby, that is this toddler, up to 2 years old, or by getting all the kids that were 2 years old and under in that whole area. So he killed a lot of children just trying to get Jesus, but God protected Jesus. So again, that tells me that Jesus was probably able to stand up and grab some of that gold, frankincense, and myrrh from these wise men. He wasn't just laying there not knowing anything that was going on. He had probably a little bit of focus in his eyes when he saw these people come in to visit him. The reason people like Jesus as a babe in a manger is because he's harmless, or so it seems. That's why they like that Christmas baby Jesus. That's why they like the nativity scene. It's the same reason that they like Jesus dying on the cross at the end of his earthly life. They like him dying on the cross, and they like the baby in the manger. I talk about this a lot because I just need people to see this. So I need somebody other than me to notice this. They want him either looking like he's powerless and dying, or they want him powerless and a baby. But when he's in his full power and coming to judge sin, they don't want that Jesus. You got to understand that's what's going on here. Look there in Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6. Another familiar verse to people who have been in church any length of time or that know anything about the Bible. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. The Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Capital THE each time. There is no other. You're not going to dodge him. It doesn't matter what believers and professing believers and false believers, what they do with Jesus, what mistakes they and we make in regard to Jesus and our walk with him. He's perfect, and he is really not going to pay an account for our mistakes. We're all going to pay account for our own sins before him. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Will perform this. You can't sit on the fence with Jesus. You can't point at what kind of person King James was. You can't accuse men and women of manipulating people with the Bible. All of that is not going to work when you die. There will be a judgment. You will account for your sin. And all the mocking and scoffing is going to just dry up in your throat. Just know that. I already know that. And I already know there's some things I'm going to pay for, but I'm preparing myself for. I know a lot of people are not going to be prepared. They're not going to be prepared because they're dumb, smart people. And they think they've got it figured out already. The devil's really deceived them. He's blinded their minds. They think they're awake. They think other people are zombies and walking dead, but they're the dead men walking. But you still got time if that's you. You must be born again.